So in this video I will be talking about fermentation. So fermentation. And so fermentation is anaerobic, which means it doesn't require oxygen, and it can provide a rapid burst of ATP. And so essentially the whole point of fermentation is to recycle NADHs. And so if you don't have NADH recycled, then you can't make ATP because you need NAD plus to make ATP. And so if there's not enough oxygen, there's no acceptor for this hydrogen right there. And so then NADHs and FADH2s start forming free radicals. And so finally, essentially what fermentation is just glycolysis plus another step to recycle the NADHs and to essentially just get an electron acceptor. And so there are actually two types. Hold on, let me clear this. And so now you can see this is lactic acid fermentation. And so essentially what this is if you ever get sore after working out or whatever, your body isn't getting enough oxygen, and so as a result you make lactic acid, and lactic acid contributes to the soreness you feel in your muscles. And so here we have a different type of fermentation. It's called alcoholic fermentation. And I think everyone's pretty familiar with this. Yeast, you take yeast, and this process is essentially how beer is made. Beer is made by alcoholic fermentation, and in the end you get ethanol, which is the drinkable alcohol that is in beer, wines, and vodka. And so let's talk more about what exactly happens. So let me clear this. And so first, glycolysis occurs to make the 2-pyruvate. And so an enzyme here, located here, lactate dehydrogenase, converts these pyruvates into lactic acid, which is the same thing as lactate. And so this is common in animal cells. But a key thing to note is, before when I talked about the lactic acid causing soreness and tiredness, the lactic acid contributes to the soreness, but when you get tired, when your muscles feel like they're tired, the fatigue comes from phosphate, excessive phosphate accumulating, not lactic acid directly. And so why is lactate dehydrogenase important? Well, this enzyme converts pyruvate into lactate, but most importantly, it allows NAD plus to be formed to accept electrons and then essentially make more ATP. So it allows NAD plus to be formed / recycled. So when pyruvate is converted to lactate, NAD plus is recycled. And believe it or not, you could actually use this lactic acid to as a source of energy, and it's called the Cori cycle. And so that pretty much sums it up for lactic acid fermentation. Now let's talk about alcoholic fermentation. Let me clear this. So alcoholic fermentation down here is essentially the same thing. So once again, lactate, dehydrogenase, converts lactic acid, pyruvate. Sorry, hold on. I'm getting these mixed up. It's not lactate dehydrogenase. It's pyruvate. And this helps, pyruvate dehydrogenase helps make the ethanol / alcohol. And so essentially what's going on in when you're fermenting, when you're making beer, so this is carried out by yeast, most commonly by yeast. And so carbon dioxide, you see how carbon dioxide is made? Those are the bubbles in beer. And so essentially what happens is when the yeast makes too much ethanol, it essentially just kills the yeast after a while when there's too much alcohol accumulating. Because remember, alcohol is actually a disinfectant too. So yeast gets killed with too much alcohol accumulating. And so finally, just a summary, fermentation makes 2 ATP, and that's not really efficient compared to oxidative phosphorylation, which makes a bulk of ATP. But however, when you're running low on oxygen, this is the best you could do. And so let's just summarize what happened. So you have 1 glucose, and then 2 ADP, and 2 phosphates, and then your output is 2 lactate, which is lactic acid, or 2 alcohol and CO2. So these are different. You either get 2 lactate, which is from that process, or 2 alcohols and 2 CO2s from this process. And then both of them have a net 2 ATP net. And this whole process is 2.1% efficient compared to a whole 29% efficient for aerobic respiration.